Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. Holy shit balls.
Guys,
that's
how
how I'm going to bring this one in.
It's been a hell of a day.
It's been a hell of a day.
But you know what was a hell of a time? Last night for me.
Why?
Let me tell you why. Okay, so I live alone, and before you get any ideas, I have cameras, and I live in a gated community.
And a fierce dog.
So you're not getting me. But with that being said, I'm sitting on my couch yesterday. I'm doing stuff for our Academy convention. It's like our big event of the year for all the Academy students, and all of a sudden it was like, wah, and like half the lights in my house went off, and some started flickering back on and off, and I have like a lamp.
Ew.
It was so.
You know I get chills when there's like light flickerings going on.
I'm gonna have to show you a video. I literally
It's like haunted.
stood up. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a fucking haunted house. And I have a lamp with 3 light bulbs, and one would turn on and then dim back and turn on. And I was sitting there, I'm like, this is the fucking worst. So immediately I'm like, this house has faulty electricity. Fuck this. And I'm trying to like,
I would immediately be like, there's ghosts in my house.
well, I'm like walking around testing all these lights. I call my dad and he's like, go check your fuses, check this, check that. Everything was good. And as I'm texting our friend Amanda Ziola, I was like, what the fuck? And she's like, dude, I bet you someone hit a fucking pole or something. That's why you only have like half power, which I didn't even know that was a thing, by the way.
I didn't realize it was so dramatic. I literally was like texting you. I'm like, hey, where did you get those cute high top Converse? And you're all, hold on, my power's out. And I was like, yeah, no worries. And then like 2 minutes later, you sent me a link. I was like, oh, thanks.
Because I support the Converse life and I wanted to help a sister out. But at the same time, well, and then here's the crazy thing. Now, all of a sudden, so my dog, I have a little Frenchie. He's like 26 pounds. He's a monster. He's a tank. And he doesn't bark at anything ever. He has 2 kinds of barks. There's one that's like, bleh, and one that's like, gah, 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 like freaks out. And he only does it when he sees people.
He's all, you're not threatening.
Literally, all he hears, bah. And I'm like, yeah, it's all right.
He's like just sleeping. He's like, I can't decide if it's aggressive.
Oh my gosh, he barks in his sleep sometime, and it's the cutest thing. Because then he's laying down and he'll start doing this. Yeah, he'll start running in his sleep. So if he's doing like the bah, it's fine. But once I know his like aggressive, like, Mom, there's a person, because he does it to the poor gardeners when they're out in the back. Poor guys. So all of a sudden, I'm like walking around my house trying to plug my fucking phone in. I have a palm tree that has like lights all around it. I'm plugged into my fucking palm tree.
Christmas palm tree.
This is ridiculous. But yes, my fucking Christmas palm tree. And then all of a sudden, all I hear is my dog going,
at the palm tree?
No, he's standing on the back of my couch facing my front door. And at first I'm like, what the fuck, dude? And then,
Ronald,
now there's a helicopter all around, and it's so loud, like it was close by.
You know, we have helicopters all the time where we live, like because we're right on the water, and it's so sad. Little Isla, when she hears a helicopter, she gets so scared and she runs and is like starts immediately crying, and then I have to hold her, and then she'll go, oh
my
I don't know
God.
why she's like she thinks the house is like under attack because they literally like fly right there.
Do you know I just saw a video about desensitizing kids to things like that? And that like a guy was like holding his baby and he'll turn on a blender and his baby literally went and went to grab him and then she stared and was like, okay, and then totally chilled out.
Yeah.
So now my fucking dog is freaking out. I hear a helicopter. I'm like, what is going on? And I have the Ring app on my phone, which is like security cameras and stuff. And it pops up because there's like a whole Dana Point one. And it was like someone commented and they're like, hey, does anybody know why there's a helicopter? I'm like, cool, I'm not the only one wondering. And someone was like, oh yeah, I can hear them yelling on the little microphone from the helicopter. They're saying, give yourself up. We will find you. If you don't, we will let the dogs out. And I'm sitting there, I'm like,
you got Ronald and your knife and you're ready to go.
So all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God. So my master bedroom links up, it's butting up to my backyard and there's a sliding glass door into my backyard from the master bedroom. I just fucking installed this huge, like 7-foot glass paned doggy door. Like it's huge and I don't have the lock installed. So it's shut door, but bitch ain't locked. So all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like,
there's a murder in your house.
I'm like, I have half power. I have a phone that's on 12% at this point because it turns out palm trees.
I'm so glad you sent me the shoe link in the midst of all this. I mean, that
dick.
seems important.
Like I said, I was trying to really help you out. So then I'm like going downstairs, my dog's with my flashlight phone to go open up my back door, take out the panel, lay it down somewhere, close and lock the door. It's dead fucking pitch dark.
I think I would have just like gotten in my car and drove off and tell things.
I considered it, but then I was like, well, what if he's in the garage?
You're like the girl in the haunted movie that you're like, don't go that way. You're dumb. Stop
you dumb bitch. Don't
go
do
that
it.
way.
That's how you get murdered. hard. Literally.
I would grab my dog and like my purse and be like running. I'd be like, bye.
Well, and so then I'm sitting there and my friend Amanda, she's like, do you have pepper spray? I'm like, no, I have a butcher knife with avocado on it because I just ate dinner. So I literally.
You're going to throw avocados at him?
Oh my God. Look, have you ever gone gun shooting before?
Yeah.
Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you good at it?
Well, I have it's actually kind of a sad story, but like I'm kind of scared of guns because I have a brother who died when he was 7 years old from a gunshot. And I was actually not born, and my mom was actually done having kids. And then
shut up.
Yeah, she was like, "No, I'm done." And it's a really sad story, but he went over to a friend's house to go play, and he was only 7. There wasn't parents home, and back then I think that gun safety wasn't like. I just don't think people were as safe as they are now. And they were boys, and they found a gun like kind of hiding, and his friend literally pointed at him point blank, shot him in the heart, killed him like instantly. And the saddest thing is my mom was actually home with like the other kids, and I don't know, like back then, I don't know if like parents like didn't know if like they'd be like, go to the neighbors and play.
Yeah,
you know
it was
what I mean?
just be home before the streetlights come on.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, hey, go to the, and I was just like, oh my God. But anyway, I've always kind of weirdly felt connected to my brother who I didn't know, and he actually was born with a cyst on his eye, and he had a little scar taken off. And my mom wasn't gonna have kids, and when I was born, I had the exact same cyst and the exact same eye, I have like a little matching scar. But anyways, weirdly, I've always kind of felt like I'm like, oh, I don't know. But my like Garrett took me shooting guns, and I did it once, but I kind of felt nauseous. Like I was like, I can't. Something stirred up in me, and I was like, I can't do it. But so yeah, no, I don't feel super comfortable. Garrett does. I would probably like if somebody came in my house, I throw weights at them, or like I don't even here, take that 10-pounder. Like I don't even know. Like I said, if this actually happened to me, I would literally like pick up shit and just probably like hightail it down. I don't know where I'd go. Like,
and see, for me, like I was raised shooting guns, and gun safety in my house was like a really big thing. Guns were not left loaded, but you know where the bullets are, you know what safety is. And the big rule is like, you don't point it at anyone. Like if you're not planning on killing someone, you don't fucking do that. Like that's not a joke. So I'm weirdly not bothered by guns. I feel like if someone were trying to mug me, they'd be like, give me all your shit. And I'd be like, fuck off. Like get out of here.
You'd take your avocado.
Yeah. Pop him in the head. But girl, I think if they came at me with the knife, no, I'd be like, here's my money, my social security number. I think I was stabbed in a previous life, where it's so, knives are so scary to me. Like I don't find it
so
a
you should
joke.
Probably at least get some mace then.
Someone told me to get a taser.
I feel like you'd have to be closer to somebody. I like the idea of mace because it shoots further, right?
I'm gonna get that. Have you ever heard of like that bear mace?
Yeah.
It's made for bears. It's like gnarly.
But
it's like wasp
what
spray.
What if it was me, Ani? I was coming to put lights on your palm tree and you just fucking maced me. Like,
where's Danielle? Ani maced her ass.
Actually, I would never come in your back door and be like, surprise! Boo! Wouldn't that be weird? You're like, Danielle, why are you in my house?
Well, especially because that'd be to my bedroom and I'm probably in like brown underwear. I'd be like,
anybody
ma'am.
who came in that door, even if you know them and you didn't know they were coming, that would be weird, and you should probably mace them anyway. No, you shouldn't.
I'm fine. I'm throwing those Chinese throwing stars. That's what we're doing.
Okay, what is our topic?
Anyway, everything ended up okay.
You're safe. I got a new pair of Converse.
I made my boyfriend FaceTime me until I fell asleep. I was scared. I slept on my couch, so that was my night.
This was a suspenseful beginning to a show. So
it's a fucking horror movie night last night.
Wow, let's get on to our topic. I feel like our topic, Ani and I we come to the studio and we're like, what do we feel like our students need to hear? What do we feel like our listeners need to hear? And we kind of got to this place even where with like business and relationships and everything that we kind of are like, well, what's a win? And because I think a lot of times in life, you get to this place where you're like, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. And you just end up kind of like going in a circle, and you get so concerned about like proving somebody wrong instead of just like taking a minute. What do you call it? Proactive listening? No.
Active listening.
Active listening, right? So it's like you can have your opinions, your beliefs, whatever it is, but if you're always kind of fighting to be right in something, then you're never going to win.
And even like think about it in like personal relationships, because I've asked my boyfriend this before, and not to like train him or things, but you know, sometimes like when you're going back and forth and you're riled up and you're upset, it's almost like you lose sight of the fact that like you're in a relationship with this person. Like you guys love each other. Like what the hell is going on?
Right.
And so there have been times where I stop and I'm like, okay, hold on. Or he'll be like, wait. And we'll both kind of be like, okay, well, in this situation, like what's a win for you? Like what would make you happy right now? And I think when you ask someone that, it kind of puts them, they kind of do one of two things. They're either like, I don't know, or I'm just mad. I don't know. I'm just mad. And then it's like, okay, so you don't even really want to find a solution. Matt always calls it being solution-based. He's like, you're not looking to be solution-based and you're just looking to argue.
Right.
And they're either doing that or they'll be like, you know what? My feelings were just hurt and I just wanted you to listen and I want to feel loved right now. Okay, well, how do you feel loved? You know, it's coming more to like not a consequence, but finding like a solution to the problem and the conflict, because I feel these days, I mean, I know life is crazy and business is crazy and hard. And like there's, especially like in the hair world, man, it's a bunch of women and there's so many fucking emotions all the time that it can be really hard to like come to like a landing place. And it's not about making the other person wrong.
Right. It's just about, and I feel like too, like if there's one thing I've learned inside of just like my personal relationship with my husband is like, I mean, we went through probably like 3 to 4 years of just like, are we going to stay married? Are we not? What are we doing? Like I literally started the foundation of my business because I was like, okay, we're done. And I got 2 babies and the only skill I have is do hair. So sink or swim, right? Like sink or swim. And in doing that, I started to work on myself. Garrett started to work on himself and we started like coming back together. But we both had to be willing to kind of like work on ourselves, but we still had some super heated arguments. Yeah. And there was like, I think we've talked about this before, where it's like, you're kind of like doing jabs and digs and you're like, why am I trying first of all, why am I saying things that to somebody that I'm trying to work things out with? Why am I saying things to like trigger them? Right.
Yes.
And then like little jabs. And then the other thing is I'm like, why am I arguing just to be right? Like, and I got to this place where even with Garrett and I, like, he'd be like, you don't want to argue. And I'm like, because you're just trying to tell me why you're right. And I felt like really strong and like, I don't believe this, right? I'm like, no, I don't. He'd be like, you're wrong in this situation. I was like, to my soul, he'd say, you're stubborn. And I'm like, you can call me stubborn all day long, but you're not going to convince me of what you're feeling right now. Those are your feelings. Those are not my feelings.
Yes.
This is how I feel. This is where I stand. I don't believe I'm wrong. So you can sit there and try to convince me why I'm wrong, but I don't believe it. And it took us a long time to where we could have arguments and maybe we weren't on the same page, but we finally got to this place where I'm like, I disagree with you and you can believe that and I'm going to believe what I want. And we got to this place of respect where we're like, I'm cool with my decisions, right? And there's sometimes we'll go back and forth and we'll argue and it kind of like turns itself around and like molds into like a beautiful conversation, right? But we have to be in a space where we're willing to kind of like listen to another person.
Well, and I think we tend to look at, because you have to realize that the way you see a topic or the way you see an opinion or a decision, you're only seeing it through like the lens of your eyes. Like imagine there's a wall and you're on one side and Garrett or your business partner, whoever's on the other side, and he's like, Danielle, the wall's purple. And you're like, you're looking at your wall and you're like, this wall is orange. Like, what do you mean? You're both seeing one wall from different sides. And because you're looking at it differently, you see something different. Right. But it doesn't mean that either one of you are wrong. But I love what you just said. Like, it is based on, there's feelings attached to it. Right. I look at Converse and I'm like, I fucking love these shoes and I'm so obsessed and they're comfortable. And Danielle's like, they're not really comfy. I'm like, but they are comfortable.
And I'm like, you can't talk me into they're comfortable. My foot's a different shape than yours. They are uncomfortable.
And I'm like, but I got platform ones. And she's like,
and I'm like, but those are real cute. So I'll suffer with them being uncomfortable.
But everything it's all about really figuring out like, where do you stand? Like what's important to you, what isn't. And man, taking digs, like, damn girl. I know.
When I find myself doing that now, I'll be like, there's been times where I've like said something and I'll be like, now because I feel like I'm like a higher level of consciousness of myself. I've worked on myself. I've gone through a lot, both in personal and business and all that. But I still do it. Sometimes I'll say stuff and I'm like, that was a fucking bitch comment. It was like, ignorant. Shit. It was bad. It was like word vomit. And I like, because Garrett's one that'll explode quickly. So as his feathers are being ruffled, I immediately am like, I diffuse the situation because I'm like, that was a bitchy comment. I'm tired of this and that. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, even though I don't agree with what you're doing, how I responded, I'm going to take accountability for how I just responded.
Man, there was something, I can't even think of what it was, that I said to my boyfriend the other day, and I did it. I literally, later on, I told him, I did it to make you mad because I was mad and I was upset and you were making me mad and you were just so nonchalant that I was like, oh yeah,
you're like,
okay,
oh yeah,
And man, I used to do that really bad because I used to be very, very hot-headed, and I think it's because I'm so good at reading people. I can gauge very quickly like what would make someone so angry, and I would say it and do it and be like, I don't care. Then I'd walk away like, you're really mad. I'm not anymore, sucker.
You've gotten better at that. I think you're more powerful because like you and Garrett are similar in the sense that you can kind of like your feathers will ruffle or whatever you want to like. Yeah, and I can like feel it. Like you don't have to say anything. Your eyeballs just get big, and I'm like, oh, Ani, it's okay. But I feel like, and same thing with Garrett. Like you guys have learned to really be more powerful in a different direction, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like when you take a minute, and you're like, okay, and you listen to somebody. All of a sudden, you're like, instead of just reacting right out of the gate, like I don't agree. I want to be right. I want to do this. Like when you just like take a minute and listen, you're like, okay. And then you come up with like a really good, solid, like even stronger response because and I'm like, oh, I can't argue. That was a really good response. Like,
and and I'll say it's not easy. Like people ask me, they're like, well, how'd you grow out of it? I'm like, it took 10 years of like 10 years of like actively, like when things were like literally on the tip of my tongue, ready to spew, like physically you'll see me go and like hold my breath to be like, don't do it. And because I always tell myself, I'm like, that's not the person you want to be. That's not how you want to show up. And it doesn't fucking help. It doesn't help.
It doesn't. Why? Garrett used to tease me because he'd say like, so my grandma randomly, I had like memories of her being like, well, those are sure some ugly shoes. And I'd be like my family's very direct. Like all the women in my family just say stuff and you're like, why? Why was that necessary to say? I realize that's a thought that popped in your head and you might not agree with the shoes I'm wearing, but do you feel better as a human being?
Damn.
And so Garrett would always be like, oh, like, you know, it's a dig. This is a dig. This is a dig. Garrett would say, okay, Gail. Ooh. And I was like, at first I'd be like, fuck you. And like, it was like a whole blow up of like conversation. And now like, I like love and respect my mom and he actually loves and respects my mom too. And he doesn't say it anymore, but like there was one time it was like maybe like 6 months ago, he goes, okay, Gail. And I was like, I'm not offended. I love my mom and so do you. And he's like, damn it, you're right.
You're like,
but he
sucker.
like reminded, I said something that like triggered him. And then he said that to try and jab me back and trigger me. And I was like, but then I like literally had to reel it in and I'd be like, you love my mom and so do I. And he's like, you're right. And it diffused the situation.
Well, even like my neighbor, he's 80 some. He's just a crazy old white dude, honestly. And I was walking in from getting my mail and he's like, oh, hey, how you doing? I said, oh, good. How are you? He's like, good. And he's like, I like the hair. It looks very nice. And I said, oh, thank you. He goes, it looks really nice laying on your arm, covering your tattoos. I was like, I go, and he goes, I'm sure no one's ever said that to you before. And
so I'm like this because sometimes I would walk into the salon and I'd be like, your hair's brown. And I remember
I'd be like, fuck.
But I wasn't like bad or good, but I used to say stuff like that all the time and now I try to be better. But I would like state the obvious. I'd be like, your hair is purple. And I learned this from you. You'd always be like, thank you. And I was like, I was just saying something that I was observing, but then I had to ask myself, like, why? Why did I need to say it? Because if I say your hair's purple and it's not nice and I just say your hair's purple, you're like...
It's like being like, oh, you got your lips done.
Yeah. And you're like... And immediately I'm like, yeah, do you like them? But if you say, oh, your lips look really good, or like, but if you just say, oh, you got your lips done, and that's all you say, you're kind of an asshole.
Well, yeah, that's why when he said it to me, I'm FaceTiming my boyfriend and he's like, I go, was that a dig? And he's like, what the fuck? Yeah, I was like... I'm like looking at myself. I'm like, yeah, I guess dude's never seen me without sleeves on. And I was just like, thank you. And I was like, I think he meant to insult me. But man, digs, like you got to really reel it in because I feel like you almost like
conscious of doing it because it's like,
yes. And if you do it, dude, own up to it. Yeah. When I did that to my boyfriend, literally later, he was like, that was really hurtful. And I go, I need to apologize. And I have a big thing about the word apologize and I'm sorry. You apologize in business, you say I'm sorry in a personal relationship. Because if you're just like, I apologize for doing that, it's like, motherfucker, this is not a business meeting. Like I'm your teammate and your partner. It's an I'm sorry. I don't differentiate.
Like,
you'll never hear me say I'm sorry in business. I always say, oh, I apologize for that. But in a personal relationship, I will never say I apologize.
More professional. I like it.
Yeah. And I also read somewhere like you never do that.
I don't. Garrett would get mad at me. He'd say, you don't say I'm sorry a lot. And I'm like, I know it's really hard for me to say sorry. Like, oh yeah, if I say sorry, like, oof.
I'd rather eat my own hand than say I'm sorry. But let me tell you, in that moment, I was like, you're right. I did do that. And I'm sorry that I did it. And I'm sorry that I hurt you. Because I hate people, they're like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not you apologizing. Are you
sorry?
Are you sorry that you did it? Or are you sorry that you fucking got caught and now I'm upset?
I think though, when we catch ourselves doing the like little things like that, like you really I have to like hold back on saying things like your hair is brown. Like, why? Why do I need to say that? Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to be conscious of what you're doing.
Like an incomplete thought. Like,
right.
Oh, your hair is brown. I really like it. Or in your mind, you're like, she changed her hair. It looks good. Hey, your hair's brown.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So you have to like be careful with how you say it. But kind of going back to like just one of the biggest things that has helped me in life, in my relationship or in business, is really asking myself like, okay, how do I create a win? And I think that oftentimes the steps in between, like you don't want to do it. Like you're like, that's not who I am as a person. I can't do that, because we hold on to our identity of like who we are at this certain point, right? So in order to become this bigger person, this better person, to like this person we see ourselves to be, we have to do things that maybe we don't want to be, because it questions our identity for who we are now.
Well, and I feel like it's very easy, because I know a lot of people, they always, because how do I explain this? People like to say like, oh, align yourselves with people who think the same. And while I say align yourself with people whose goals are just like as large as yours, and they're visionaries and they see big, I think you should always meet and talk to people who don't have the same opinions as you. And because if not, you kind of sit in this loop. It's a closed feedback loop where you're bouncing ideas off each other, but it's like, I like your hat. Black hats are the best. Black hats are the best. I like your shoes. White shoes are the best. Yeah, white shoes are the best. Do you like colored shoes? No, colored shoes are the worst. It's like, wait a minute. Wait. Why can't all shirts and shoes and whatever? And even like an example, I have had a client that wore a hijab, the headscarf, and I sat there and I'm like, well, I literally like never understood it. And finally I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? She's like, no. I said, I've never really had the chance to talk to someone who wore a hijab, and I didn't even know that's what it was called. I called it a headscarf. She's like, it's called a hijab. I'm like, cool, thank you for that, first off. And I said, I don't understand, to be honest. Obviously I'm in the world of hair. I said, could you maybe explain it to me so I can understand a little bit more about what that means for you and your culture, and like the severity
just having
of it.
An understanding.
Yeah. And her response was like, hey, yeah. She goes, let me put it in a way you'll get it. She's like, and that she didn't say it mean. She goes, someone seeing me without my hijab would be like you walking butt naked down the street. And I was like, oh, I go, really? She's like, yeah. I go, okay, that now makes sense to me, because they view hair as something very sexual, just like your other areas, that it's meant to be seen only by their husband. But I love that she wasn't like, oh, don't ask me my religion, or like she was so.
But you kind of came at it very like. Not ignorant, but like you were like genuine. You were like, hey, I want to learn more. And I think that a lot of times we're like, oh, I don't want to learn. Well, I don't know why we're scared to learn more. Are we scared to ask because then people are going to be like, why do you not know? Like, I think the more
people
are
afraid they might actually change their opinion.
Or like maybe like for you to say that to her, you probably had something in your mind. You're like, I don't want to offend her. Right?
I was so terrified of offending her.
But that's the thing. But if you ask kind of like with the intent to what did you call it? Like
active listening.
Active listening, where you're like, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? Most people are like, no. And then if you actually listen and you're not trying to be like, well, I think that's a bad idea that you wear that scarf, and that seems
that's a stupid scarf.
That's a strange, like, hair is beautiful. Everybody should see it. Like, you're not looking to be right. You're just looking to understand. And I think that's actually like a very powerful place to communicate. And a lot of times when we have a better understanding of things, even if we don't agree or we don't understand, at least we have knowledge, and knowledge is really powerful, because you can be like, hey, I stand with what I believe in, but I can also respect you and what you believe in as well. And just kind of, again, like going back to like how you have your circle of influence where you're like, everybody maybe thinks the same or whatever.
It's that closed feedback loop.
I feel like even in my life, when I didn't know if I was going to say married. I had 2 kids. Like, we were raised very religious. I grew up in Utah. Like, it was like, I felt like it was definitely like, they call it the bubble, like we were definitely.
It's the Mormon bubble.
It's the Mormon bubble. And all my friends were Mormon. My family was Mormon. Everybody was Mormon. And it's not like, I just felt like I'm like, like everything in my life felt like it was like pummeling downhill. Like, I just was like, oh, I don't know who to go to advice for. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do. And I was just like, that's really like the birth of my career, because I was a mom of 2 kids. We were like borderline bankrupt. Like, Garrett wasn't making any money. And I was like, what am I going to do? The only skill I have is hair, right? And I had to completely flip my story of even a hairstylist, right?
Yeah.
Like, I literally, like, I was like, oh, I'm just a hairstylist. And I had to flip my story of being a hairstylist. I had to become more than just a hairstystylist. But I really had to like kind of be careful about like just taking at the time, I remember feeling like everybody's like telling me to do this, but I feel like I should take a left, and everybody's telling me to take a right. And I had to just kind of like refocus and be like, Danielle, what do you want for you? And how do you get there? What does that look like? And I kind of like Garrett and I actually like packed up, we moved. I was like, well, I don't know if I'm done with my marriage, and I think I should probably try to like work on it. And we packed up, we actually moved to Arizona. And I kind of felt like I had to not distance myself, but I had to space myself with the bubble, right? I had to like really look at what I wanted for me, what I wanted for my family. I had to work on myself as an individual. And sometimes I think it's not like I like disowned my family. I just like, I need space. Like, I need to figure out what's right for me and figure out like where I should be. And in doing so, like I began to work on myself. And there was moments where I was like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm out. Like I can't do this anymore. And I remember like nights even like crying, like coming home from the salon, being exhausted. I had 2 young kids and I was just like, I remember thinking like, when do I get a break? And remember like, just clear as day thinking like you get a break when you choose it, like when you create a new story for yourself. And I literally was like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And I wanted to give up, but I knew in giving up, it wasn't going to serve myself. It wasn't going to serve my family. And even to this day, I feel like I continue to push because I see the impact that it creates on other artists' families, their lives, their income. Like if you take somebody's income and it's not like they just increase 10%. Like we've had artists in the program, like literally went from like making 50 grand to like 300 grand in like 1 year. I'm like, that's mind boggling what that can do for a family. And so for me, I'm like, I know if I play to the biggest version of myself and I'm constantly asking myself, what is a win, Danielle? If I'm constantly doing things that I'm uncomfortable doing to get a win, I know that so many people get the trickle effect and so many people win and we've already seen it. And it just continues to push me to be a bigger person.
Well, and even something that we've really started implementing inside of Warrior and BMS and NBR is really the leaders of the company sitting down and being like, well, what's a win? Like, what's a win for me inside of the education? What's a win for me inside of the students? What's a win for me personally?
Right.
And everybody's gone through and we've written those down where everybody can really see it. So now when we're sitting down and we're like, okay, we need to change this event to this or do this or do that or da-da-da-da-da, then we can also be like, and if someone's like, that doesn't make sense, we'll be like, well, wait a minute. Do these changes now, does it give us what we want? Does it give us the hours that we want to work, that, workout routine we want to have? Does it give us the student base? Does it give us the results for the students? Like, is it what we want? And if what we're trying to do or the change we're trying to implement doesn't correlate with the win we're trying and like the result we're wanting, then we know like it's just not meant to be.
Well, and we even had like a 4-hour meeting. I was like, oh, it was a long meeting. But it was good because we sat down and we just sat down and literally you guys asked me the question. You're like, what do you want? Like, I know you want like this in your personal life and this and this. And I said, yes, I feel like I've gotten to a super cool place in my life right now where I'm like, I really feel pretty balanced. Like I have time with my husband, I have time with my kids. And I said, but the one thing I don't want is to ever feel like I'm not involved in my business. Like I love working. Like I love the business aspect of it. I'm like, so these planning meetings that are 4 hours, I want to be there for every single one of them. I don't want you guys to know more about what's going on in my company than I do. And so although I may seem like I'm kind of like behind the glass door, people are like, can I reach out to Danielle? Can I do? I genuinely feel like I want my students to know, like, I'm in the know. Like it's almost like I'm the president, you're the VP, and you're just like filling me in on all the information. You know what I mean? But yes. That was very important for me is as a business owner, I never want to feel like I don't know what's going on in my company. And that was just like a really crucial conversation that me, you, and Katie had. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, what is a win for you? And that was a win for me.
Yeah. And especially, and even in that meeting, like, so Katie is the director of operations, and her and I have, because we're both so heavily involved in kind of like I'm a lot more front end than she is, but we're both like really heavy in the back end of it and like creating structure and things, that she'll send me things and she'll be like, I don't understand why this is like this because da 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 da. And immediately, like this happened a few times where I immediately take offense and my response is very defensive. And I know it, like I catch myself doing it. I've recalled audios.
You put a lot of time into something and then she's questioning it and you immediately are like, how dare you?
Well, and it was very cool because talking about like what's a win, it also comes to like important conversations and like I said, active listening and just listening and being open and honest with each other. Where
you'll get a lot further. You'll get a lot further.
When she came to me and she was like, Ani, I want you to know when I ask you these questions, I'm not asking you or saying it because I think you've done a shitty job. She's like, that's not what I'm saying. Although I can understand that might be what you're hearing, which there's a difference in what someone says and what someone hears. She's just saying this doesn't work. And I'm hearing you did a terrible job putting it together. And she's like, I'm aware we wouldn't be here and it wouldn't be what it is without you. But no, I'm just here to create more structure, to give you time and time off, which is what you want. And I was like, thank you for saying that. You're correct. every time you would say that, all I heard was, Ani, you did a stupid job putting this together and it's shitty.
Well,
and that's why I'd come back and be like, oh yeah, but.
So it kind of goes back, like I kind of hate this word, but I love it. We're always like, let's have feedback. But you have to be very careful with like, again, if you're giving, like, I hate when people are like, I'm giving you feedback. And you're like, no, bitch, you're just arguing to be right here. Like, that's
You're actually just being a total dick.
Consider what your feedback is, and is it giving you a win, and is it productive? Because I feel like feedback's turned into this word to be like, well, I'm not critiquing you and I'm not fighting. I'm giving you feedback. And you're like, is your feedback productive? Ask yourself that.
Like, is it actually trying to help me, or is that your way of getting some shit off your chest and you're being a total rag?
Because sometimes I'll say, can I give you feedback on this? But really, I'm like, no, never mind. Because I really
you know what? I'm like,
never mind. It's not feedback. I just wanted to like voice my opinion, and I already saw it play out, and it doesn't do anything, and I'm over it, and I'm like, no, I'm done.
We've done that so many times.
Like that's when you see like a race of Voxers, I'm like, no, this doesn't matter anymore.
Oh man, and anytime someone sends me a Voxer and they take it back, I'm like, what'd you do? What was that? You might as well just tell me now, because now I'm overthinking what it was, and now I want to know what you said. But guys, it's just so important to be able to have, and here's one big thing that I truly believe: if you cannot have a conversation with someone who does not believe the same thing as you, without you getting so triggered that you no longer have the conversation, you have more growth that you need to do for yourself as a human being.
Right.
Because I feel very, very firmly on certain topics that I know, like for example, and I'll use Garrett because I feel like him and I were both very fiery people, and we can get very fired up, and we've collided and like clashed, like gone to war, where it's been like, it literally turned into like a bomb, and it's like, yeah, well, that was expected because it was fire, and gasoline, you know? But even inside of that, I know that there are topics that him and I don't even agree on at all. But I could easily sit down with him and be like, can you just tell me why? Like, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
And that's not a conversation to be like, can you tell me why you believe it so I can tell you why you're wrong?
No.
That'd be great. It's not about
that. And everybody
that.
has different experiences and different beliefs, and that's okay. And I think that genuinely, like, we all want to have the bigger picture, but we get stuck in being right versus being respectful of other people's beliefs or whatever it is. And so it's just, I don't know. I just feel like...
Or even I feel like for business owners, like for all of our salon owners, man, you're dealing with a lot of emotions.
Yes.
You're dealing with a lot of clients and a lot of staff. And I actually had a salon owner come to me and she's like, real talk, how the fuck do you deal with all these feelings?
Yeah.
Like the girls at the salon, they're so emotional, then they're doing this, then they're doing that. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I work on myself.
Right.
I can't change how you feel.
Right.
I cannot change how you react. I can't change anything about you. And I wouldn't even try to. But what I can do is focus on myself and center myself so heavily that even if someone's like, Ani, and they're like freaking out, that I'm
you're
like,
kind of like you're in like a protective like bubble of yourself almost. Yeah, you're like, okay.
Yeah. And that allows me to have those conversations. And yes, there are totally days where someone says some shit and my first response is, you motherfucker. And I'm like angry, and sometimes I'll like literally just vox things to myself and then just delete it and be like, cool, you got it out. Now let's handle this rationally.
I feel like this is like one thing for me, like social media digs or like social media comments. Like I'm very protective about because I'm so busy, but not even busy, but I love spending time with my kids. I love spending time with Garrett. I love taking trips. Like I'm very protective of my energy, and I just am careful with what battles I fight, right? And so even down to like somebody saying something negative or something I don't believe in, instead of even responding, I'm like, delete or block. You know what I mean?
Why?
Like,
because the win for you at the end of the day is time with your kids and husband.
And there has been times where I get in this like, it's like a troll face on my Instagram, and I'm like, or I'll click over to that profile and I'll be like, why did I feel like I needed to respond to this person?
You know what? I'm going to delete my own comment because it's fucking pointless.
But it's like I'm arguing to be right, and I don't even know who this person is or what they're, you know what I mean?
We get so sidelined. I feel like not like with the drama, but for some reason, anger is like a really easy emotion to like fall into if you're not aware of it.
But I just realized that in myself, and I'm like, Danielle, you could respond to this and you could like be right, or you could like have the one-up comment or whatever it is. Or you could just delete it, and then it immediately, like, they don't respond, you don't respond. Sometimes I even block people if they like keep going. Like, I don't care. Not that I don't care, but I prioritize my time and where it's valuable, and it's not commenting to you. And if I do comment to you, then I'm less present over here where I need to be.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business with my kids or whatever it is. Like, if I go into a training and my mind is all like fucked, or if I go into the salon and I'm all like angry, you're gonna feel that. I'm gonna walk into the salon. I'm gonna do bad hair because I'm angry worry about like comments or something else that's going on in my life. So it's just like you have to be very protective of your energy and choose to like kind of fight your battles, I guess you could say.
And I always say, like, for me, it's like, are you willing to fall on the sword? Like, is that topic, is that thing so important to you that it's worth you falling on the sword and pouring time and energy and emotional energy and everything else into it? Like, is that worth it to you? Because if it is, cool. But also go into that conversation not being like, ooh, I'm gonna make you so wrong, but being like, hey, at the end, I just want to understand. I feel like if understanding, like truly understanding is always your goal, there's always something you can grow
from.
And
I want to understand with people that I connect with, the people that I'm close to. I don't necessarily want to feel the need to understand a random like troll on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. But if it's like somebody who I genuinely like care about and like is kind of in my world, I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation. I want to hear you. I like, let's see where this goes.
And so we're coming up to the end podcast, but guys, what I really want you to pay attention to is how are you acting inside of like an argument or a disagreement? Are you the person that you're like, no, you're wrong. Let me pull up articles and show you why you're wrong. And I have a PowerPoint presentation to also tell you why you're wrong. And then here's
Let me show you why I'm so smart. Nobody show you cares why you're so fucking smart. Nobody cares.
Or are you really looking at it like if it's your personal relationship, like, hey, and my boyfriend says to me, like, if we've been arguing and he'll be like, Ani, you're taking this offensively. Remember, I love you and I'm on your team. So, and I'm like, you're right. So remember, it's not you versus that person. It's you and that person versus a problem. And I feel when you realize you're on the same team, it allows you to really come to a solution. Or are you just the person you're like, I just want to argue and I don't actually have a win. My win is just to argue. Some people I feel really get so sucked into drama. They don't remember their life without it.
And almost it like gives you a sense of purpose. And if that drama is gone, you're like, like, what do I do? What do I do?
My life is calm. Why is my life calm?
Yeah, and there's been moments where I feel like that calm of my life, and it used to give me anxiety. I was like, but now I try to channel that like calmness into like, hey, I need to be more productive in maybe being a mom or be more productive in business or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Because we always say like if you're stagnant, you're kind of like regressing a little bit. And I never want to feel like I'm regressing. I always want to feel like I'm like leveling up as a human being. And so if I feel that calm, it's not like it's a bad thing to be, but I try to figure out where I need to manage my time or where I need to pour my passion or my energy into. And again, choosing my battles and what I choose to make a stand for and what I feel passionate to share with students or family or whatever it is. So I guess our end message in this show, you guys, is like, figure out what is a win for you. Start noticing how you respond to things. And also make sure that you're listening. You're listening with an open heart and open mind, because I feel like in listening, you actually learn a ton. So
beautiful. So guys, thank you for being here. If you want more information on our education, you can go to bigmoneystylist.com. Our events are sold out for the year, but we will be having new ones nationwide starting 2021. And if you want
crazy that it's like, like we're already starting to talk about 2021, but it takes a lot of planning. Like we plan out events in like a year in advance.
I feel like 2020 has lasted 4 years.
That's true.
Are we still in this year?
We're still in this year, and let's make it a productive year. Again, if you guys want more information, you go to bigmoneystylist.com. If you love the podcast, share it with some of your friends, some of your artists, some of your family members. If you find value in it, thanks for listening every week. And you can also catch multiple repeats on dkwstyling.com if you want to kind of go back through the archive. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you every Tuesday.
Bye.